It's the deadliest tornado in the Dallas area in 88 years. An EF4 with winds topping 160 miles an hour plowed through Garland, Texas last night, flattening hundreds of homes. In North Texas, at least 11 were killed.
Good morning, David. I want to give you a sense of the devastation here. This goes on house after house over a 40-mile stretch here in North Texas, mixing things like Christmas stockings and car parts. And we're not talking about homes that were flimsily built, but places made out of brick and mortar.
Tornado on the ground.
Overnight, raging tornadoes blasting through Arkansas.
We better go. We better go.
This one caught bulldozing a house and spewing out debris.
Oh my God.
This after a string of tornadoes scarred a 40-mile swath of Texas this weekend. Police saying at least 11 were killed here in Texas.
Just total disbelief. Everything on the back side of my house was on the front side of my house.
From the air, you can see the path the storm gouged, a football field-wide lane reduced to splinters.
Get back inside!
With the tornado bearing down, these people ducked into a freezer at Chili's. The tornado Saturday night blowing up transformers.
That's it! That's a tornado!
In the pitch black, the lightning illuminating the monster EF4 tornado.
Gosh, it's big.
When it descended on Interstate 30, some motorists had nowhere to hide. 8 people were killed there.
It's crossing the highway right there.
In daylight, we drove through those devastated neighborhoods.
The scope of the destruction in these neighborhoods is absolutely astounding.
That tornado so powerful, it nearly toppled Rowlett's water tower. 400 homes damaged there.
As far as the roof, all this is gone.
Norma Jimenez was saved when she and 5 family members crowded in their bathroom.
Just very grateful that we're alive.
Before this week, 2015 was shaping up to be a record low year for deaths from tornadoes. But since Wednesday, they have claimed at least 28 lives, nearly tripling the number this year. Survivors are telling remarkable stories tonight.
It's unbelievable that anybody could come out of there alive.
Linda Helen's family survived. They only had 2 minutes to get into a coat closet when the tornado hit.
The whole front of the house is gone. The only thing left was the closet they were hiding in and the kitchen.
The twister ripped off the roof of neighbor David Dennison's house.
Me and my roommate were just holding each other. I was just praying, whatever. It's crazy. It's an experience I wouldn't wish on anybody.
Heartbreaking, lose everything you ever own.
Michael Norris was at a Christmas party. His house is now gone.
Well, I just flipped over and hit my car and then hit the next door neighbors. Now I got to start all over again.
Sound just like a train.
Frank Montgomery and his family took cover under a stairwell.
Sound like so many trains was just coming, and it was just frightening for all of us.
Several homes were destroyed in the Glen Heights community outside Dallas. Residents broke down to tears when they saw what's left.
It's just sad. It's hard to see all these people's livelihood gone. Cars destroyed, flipped over in front of houses, and it's just hard to see.
Here in Garland, more than 600 homes were damaged. 8 people lost their lives. And Jeff, many others returning to scenes like this. Total losses with nothing left to return home to.
I'm just grateful. I'm just grateful to even be alive this morning. It's just history repeating itself. Waking up saying this.
This is unforeseen. No expectations. We thought that this would happen in this area, and especially on Christmas.
Across much of western Oklahoma, ice 1 inch thick coated roads and made driving treacherous. tractor-trailers skidded into trouble. Nearly 200,000 people are without power. Brad and Sarah Ayers and their 3 kids need someplace warm to sleep tonight. Without power, their house feels almost as cold inside as outside.
What's the worst part? Having little ones and it being cold, getting real cold. I mean, the outside stuff, you can get rid of all the limbs and everything else, but in here, you know, it gets pretty cold.
The huge winter storm's impact stretched from Oklahoma to New Mexico. Interstate 40 closed for more than 200 miles from Albuquerque to the Texas state line. In Amarillo, Texas, winds gusted up to 50 miles per hour. Nearly 15 inches of snow created drifts that buried cars. In eastern Oklahoma, that same storm system brought heavy rains and flooding. The Illinois River is expected to crest at 29 feet. Since Saturday, nearly 10 inches of rain has fallen in Tahlequah, where Brian Berry lives.
We're known for getting like 40 inches a year. We got a fourth of that this weekend. So it's a crazy year.
British authorities have called in the army to help people affected by severe flooding in the northwest. Some 500 soldiers have been sent to Lancashire and Yorkshire, which are said to be the worst hit counties. An additional 1,000 troops are on standby. The deployment follows an emergency cabinet meeting where Prime Minister David Cameron pledged to reach the affected population. Meanwhile, rescuers have been evacuating homes in York, and Leeds, where water levels are still rising. Thousands of homes remain without power in the north of England, Wales, and Scotland. Hundreds of flood warnings are in place around the country. Britain is in the midst of its second major flooding after Storm Desmond caused havoc in many towns and villages earlier this month.
I've lived here for 31 years and I've never seen anything as bad as this. And
heavy rains in Paraguay, Argentina, Brazil, and Uruguay have led officials to evacuate tens of thousands of residents and claim the lives of at least 6 people. The downpours were sparked by the El Nino weather phenomenon and have affected mostly Paraguay. 130,000 people there have been relocated to shelters, and President Horacio Cortes has declared a state of emergency. Brazil's President Dilma Rousseff has announced $1.8 million in emergency aid for flood-ravaged communities in southern Brazil. It's where some 8,000 people have been displaced by rising waters, and in Argentina, nearly 20,000 people have been driven from their homes, and at least one person has died in a flood-related incident. The Argentine Ministry of Defense said the military was helping to distribute food rations to communities isolated by the flooding.
Flying over the town of Concordia by helicopter on December 27th, Argentine President Mauricio Macri could sense how his people were affected by the worst flood in the past half-century.
Queremos estar juntos en estos momentos difíciles. Sepan que no están solos. La nación va a participar con el 66% de la inversión necesaria para construir las viviendas que saquen de esta zona de baja cota a los que hoy están inundados.
Concordia, some 430 kilometers northeast of the capital city of Buenos Aires in the province of Entre Rios, was one of the hardest hit cities in Argentina.
Tonight, a major wildfire in Southern California is 70% contained. It destroyed more than 1,200 acres this weekend in Ventura County, north of Los Angeles. Here's Maria Villarreal.
This is the nightmare Southern California residents fear most after 4 years of drought conditions. A wall of flames overtaking a major highway within inches of homes and evacuees like Jane Johnson caught in the middle.
Go, go, go. We gotta get out of here.
It's been more than 40 years since the coastal community of Solomar Beach last burned. As the flames exploded, this family had just minutes to evacuate.
We're probably gonna head to Santa Barbara. I'm 29 years old. I don't think there's ever been a fire this hillside here.
Once residents escaped, crews attacked the fire head on. This video from the Ventura County Fire Department shows a bulldozer scraping brush near the flames. Santa Monica Deputy Fire Chief Tom Clemo.
despite the challenges of high winds, steep terrain, significant brush, we were able to bring a stop to all forward progress of the fire and did not lose any structures.
It may be another day or two before the fire is fully contained. All that remains now are hot spots, calmer winds, and relief that a major disaster was avoided.
A slow-motion environmental disaster in California where a torrent of methane gas is spewing into the air. Thousands have been relocated. Maria Villarreal is in Porter Ranch.
This infrared video shows gas rolling off the top of a nearby ridge down into the community of Porter Ranch. It was shot by a law firm representing several homeowners who are now filing lawsuits against Southern California's gas utility company. Matt Pacuco bought his first home in the Porter Ranch community 8 years ago because of the scenic views and his ability to work from home as a music producer.
I can't work in here. I can't breathe in here sometimes. When that wind blows off that hill, comes down that fireplace, the gas comes in here, I can't work.
The leak started in October. So far, more than 6,500 families have filed for help, but only 2,200 have been relocated. The state agency that monitors air quality estimates nearly 70,000 pounds of gas is being released every hour. That's roughly a quarter of the methane emissions in California. SoCal gas spokesman Mike Mizrahi.
Once the leak is stopped, we'll be able to evaluate what caused the leak, and we will be able to evaluate how much natural gas escaped.
To fix the problem, the gas company drilled a relief well nearby. Using magnetic technology, workers have located the leaking well more than 3,000 feet below ground. Now they have to drill another 5,000 feet where they'll intersect the faulty well and pump it with mud, water, and cement to stop the leak. It's made Pacuco so sick he had to move out. Frustrating for you?
Beyond frustrating. It's a new way of life now. We can't live in our homes. I mean, how worse does it get?
The leak is expected to be fixed by March, but Jeff, as a precaution, elementary students that go to 2 nearby schools will be relocated until that happens.
Extreme heat is fueling an epidemic of wildfires in Australia. As Jonathan Vigliotti reports, nearly every part of that country is affected.
The flames swallowed farmland and shut down the main road between Melbourne and Sydney.
I just had to back out and get out of there as quick as I could.
The fires raced through grasslands, destroying buildings, leaving thousands without power. Entire neighborhoods were evacuated.
Didn't know what to take, so just ended up having to just leave everything pretty much and just get ourselves and the animals out.
The country is in the middle of a 4-day record heat wave with temperatures reaching 104 degrees. Hundreds have been hospitalized due to the excessive heat.
At least 2 people have been killed and 60 others injured after a strong earthquake hit parts of Pakistan and Afghanistan on Saturday morning. The quake's epicenter was a village in Badakhshan province in Afghanistan, close to the border area with Pakistan and Tajikistan. The Pakistan Meteorological Department said the quake was a magnitude 6.9, while the U.S. Geological Survey reported it at 6.2. Pakistan's Urdu TV channel Geo says the city of Peshawar in the Khyber province has reported at least 37 casualties, but there have so far been no reports of damage or casualties in Afghanistan or Tajikistan. Pakistan's National Disaster Management Authority has warned of possible aftershocks in the coming days.
In China, over 100 million people have been warned to stay indoors as dangerous smog levels persist in major cities, including the capital Beijing and the sprawling industrial hub of Tianjin. Air pollution warnings have been issued for roughly 50 cities, including 10 which are on red alert for hazardous smog. Now, the alert has limited vehicles on the road while banning fireworks and outdoor barbecues. Harmful microscopic particles known as the PM2.5 that penetrate deep into the lungs were recorded at their highest at 727 micrograms per cubic meter in Xinjiang. According to the Chinese media, the country's air quality for November and December was at a 3-year low. The problem has forced authorities to order the closure of several factories.
There is a big mess of snowy and cold weather crossing the Midwest United States right now, even affecting flights to China. There are at least 15 flights to China departing from O'Hare International Airport here in Chicago that have been either delayed or canceled completely. And 2 flights originating in China bound for Chicago have also been canceled. The Federal Aviation Administration says that all arriving flights, not just the ones from China, are being delayed to this major hub airport by an average of 4 hours and 2 minutes. Flooding is expected along the lake here in the city, and federal officials at the National Weather Service are advising people that significant amounts of sleet and ice are expected, as well as strong winds, making travel very hazardous or impossible.
2 giant asteroids are coming our way right now, speeding through space at 43,000 miles an hour, and one of them is about 2.5 miles wide. It's believed to be the asteroid responsible for the first ever recorded meteorite crash that almost killed a woman 60 years ago. We seldom hear about these giant space rocks. How come, and how dangerous might they actually be to us?
Well, let's first of all look at the big picture here, the theme of this. From an eschatology point of view, the end of times. Think about this. This, theoretically, the asteroid, meteors, this huge collision, is what gave humankind its chance, our chance. So I find that fascinating. Number 2, I don't believe anything the government says about anything. Now, number 3, look at what's interesting about this. Let's assume that all of a sudden, and we talked about this last week, if all of a sudden people started looking elsewhere, where governments had to cooperate with other governments, where one government had to lend a hand, where all of a sudden these weird jurisdictional differences between us, this sense of nationalism, all gave way to this collective, we're all in this together, where kumbaya meets we are the world. This is a fascinating topic, because what it does is it reminds us just how vulnerable we are, how we're just this little blue dot in the middle of nothing.
A beautiful Christmas morning in Rome.
Buon Natale.
Before the thousands gathered in St. Peter's Square, Pope Francis delivered a Christmas message of peace.
Giorno di pace.
A day of peace, which makes for encounter, dialogue and reconciliation.
Calling upon the international community to direct attention to regions in turmoil, praying for the victims of recent terror attacks in places like Paris, Lebanon, Egypt, and imploring Palestinians and Israelis to resume peace talks and to find a way to live in harmony, which for many in the biblical birthplace may seem out of reach today.
And the world needs peace. This is the worst I've seen the world in my short lifetime, filled with tension and fear. So I hope that once again we can all be committed to peace.
For the first time in 70 years, Germany is publishing a new edition of Adolf Hitler's political treatise, Mein Kampf. The Bavarian government has held the copyright to the work, But that expires at the end of the year, and Munich's Institute for Contemporary History plans to begin selling copies. Germany's Justice Minister, Heiko Maas, says officials can do little to stop them.
It's not easy to ban this for copyright reasons. However, anything that seems to be a hate crime can be pursued. Criminal offenses related to hate crime will be very systematically pursued in the future.
The new edition will include thousands of critical comments, and a survey shows 51% of Germans are in favor of allowing its sale.
A message claiming to be from the leader of ISIS issued a call to arms to the world's 1.5 billion Muslims this weekend. The voice claims to be Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, rallying support for the Islamic State. The terror group has faced setbacks this year. Troops have been forced to retreat from strongholds in Iraq, and Baghdadi's second-in-command was killed. He said waging battle is a duty upon every Muslim, and no one is excused. He also threatened to attack Israel and pledged to, quote, liberate Palestine.
Meanwhile, Islamic State is expanding eastwards from Iraq and Syria into Afghanistan, increasingly capitalizing on the withdrawal of US-led international combat troops. The Islamic State has become notorious for recruiting child soldiers in both Syria and Iraq, and now the extremists are doing the same thing in Afghanistan. They've opened a number of training schools where kids are transformed into terrorists. They're taught to fight, to kill, even to prepare for suicide bombings.
Turkish troops pounded areas around the southeastern town of Cizre near the Syrian border. The government is targeting the militia of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK. But shopkeeper Abdullah Varkin says the latest operation, now well into its second week, is also hitting many civilians.
The people are miserable. Even sick people cannot go to the hospital. The injured are trying to treat themselves at home, and they die due to a lack of doctors and blood loss. People do not have access to bread. Chemists are shut, and you don't have health centers here. The state is bombing everywhere without discrimination.
The pro-Kurdish People's Democratic Party, or HDP, says at least 38 civilians have been killed in the operation. State media says troops have killed 168 PKK militants. Ankara launched a peace process with the PKK in late 2012, but talks ground to a halt early this year. Prospects for new attempts to bring peace to the area remain bleak.
Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered on Saturday to set up anti-terrorism operational headquarters in 5 coastal cities. According to the decree posted on Russia's legal information website, the 5 cities are Kaspiysk on the Caspian Sea, Murmansk in Russia's northwest, Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky and Yuzhno-Sahalinsk on Russia's eastern coast, and Simferopol on the Black Sea. Moscow has enhanced its anti-terror efforts this year and is calling for a broader coalition to fight terrorism. Since September the 30th, Russia has conducted more than 4,200 airstrikes against the Islamic State terrorist group in Syria at the request of Damascus.
War-torn Libya have lashed out at the US president after the American leader congratulated them on the anniversary of their independence.
police step up security in Vienna and other cities on Saturday after receiving a warning of possible attacks during the holiday season. Reports say a friendly intelligence service sent a warning to many European capitals saying a shooting or bomb attack could take place in crowded areas between Christmas and New Year. They say the warning included several names of potential attackers, but investigations have so far led to no concrete results. In response to the alert, police have increased security at public events and roads, while asking Austrians for their understanding for more controls.
The Washington Post reported on Friday that the U.S. Justice Department has charged at least 60 individuals this year with terrorism-related crimes. Officials attribute the unprecedented number to a heightened threat from the Islamic State and the influence of social media on potential recruits. More than 55% of those charged are under 25 years old, and most of them are U.S. citizens by birth. The FBI has opened investigations in all 50 states. But the FBI official says, quote, "There is no reason to believe that the Islamic State had established cells in the United States."
A mall in Kentucky reopened Sunday with extra security, a day after more than 1,000 unruly teenagers forced it to close. Dozens of police officers were called out to the St. Matthews Mall in suburban Louisville after reports of fights and harassment of customers and store employees. And then the mayhem spilled into the mall parking lot and forced some other nearby businesses and restaurants to close early. Authorities say the teens were trying to stop some businesses from closing. There were no immediate signs that the entire incident was coordinated, but it's something police are looking into as part of the investigation.
The holiday season is in full swing. Christmas decorations can be seen all around. But as it turns out, every year for more Americans, it's becoming merely another time for sales and partying rather than a religious date to celebrate. A recent study showed a growing number of adults nowadays neither believe in God nor affiliate themselves with any religion, while atheist societies in the U.S. are experiencing a boom in new members.
Since the proliferation of the internet, we now all have access to dissenting views on everything. You look at the Jehovah's Witnesses, their church has inaccurately predicted the end of the world over 12 times now. It's a fact they try to hide. And now we can all see that, and they're kind of hating the fact that information is out there and just a few keystrokes away.
According to the Pew Research Center, if older generations of Americans still seem to keep strong religious ties, the millennials, especially those born starting from the early 90s, are moving further away.
There has been a suppression of Christian values in the society. And really, it's a contest of worldviews. Biblical worldview from the church versus a secular humanist worldview from the secular society, and that the young people have not been hearing the biblical perspective for a long time unless they are active in a Bible-believing church.
The same research center found out non-believers now make up nearly a quarter of the population, perhaps a troubling signal for a nation built on and controlled by Christian values.
This store is politically incorrect. We say, Merry Christmas, God bless America. We salute our flag and give thanks to our troops, police officers, and firefighters. If this offends you, you're welcome to leave. In God we trust.
Well, RT spoke to the owner of the politically incorrect chain, and he explained what drove him to put up such a notice.
In one of my restaurants a couple weeks ago, one of my cashiers told a customer, just said Merry Christmas, and the customer got offended that she said Merry Christmas and not Happy Holidays, and that was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back in my mind. Being in business, you have to value all of your customers, but there's a point where you just have to say enough is enough, and you have to take a stance in life, and that's what I did. And if it offends somebody, I don't mean to. To me, it is extremely absurd when people are worrying about something as trivial as that, when we have all kinds of economic problems, and this is the least of them, in my opinion.
It's been a bad
year for Christmas. A war was raged this holiday season. One family sued by city officials over a spectacular Christmas light display. The mayor in Florida wanted the show shut down. Some went further. School officials in New Hampshire banned the word Christmas from party flyers. The Christmas tree lighting was turned into just tree lighting ceremony. What festive fun. Even candy trees are becoming shapeless. Yummy, supposedly tree-shaped chocolates with no Christmas word in sight on the wrappers. Merry whatever. One American mall swapped Christmas decorations for a winter-themed glacier.
Just in 1 minute, very simply, talk about some of the clear signs that you see that we are, in fact, in the last days preceding the return of Christ.
Oh, boy. Well, you always start, if you're looking at timelines, if you want to find out where you are on God's calendar, you look at Israel. You look at Israel. And the fact that they are two things. First of all, they're alone. The world's against them. Even America, for the first time in its history, has backed away from endorsing the right to exist.
An eye for an eye. That's what the chief of Lebanon's Hezbollah has announced to Israel. Speaking on Sunday in a ceremony to mark a week since Samir Kantar's death in an airstrike in Damascus, Hezbollah leader Saeed Hassan Nasrallah said retaliation was inevitable, whatever the consequences. He warned Israel that the response could come either inside or outside the Jewish state.
Nasrallah said the resistance is alive and continues to stand against Israel with immense hope and steadfastness. Hezbollah leaders stressed that Israel is heading for elimination and that the resistance movement is responsible to spare no efforts in this regard. Nasrallah also reminded Tel Aviv that its attempts to threaten the resistance will only strengthen the will of the fighters who are ready to sacrifice for the sake of a free Palestine.
خيبر يا يهود جند محمد من بلاد الرافدين وسوريا ومصر الكنانة واليمن والحجاز بدأ يعود يا أخي في الضفة اطعن الجنة تتزين هنا على الحراب على الخناجر ها هم رجال غزة يحفرون الأرض ينبشونها وصلوا ما خلف الخطوط ثاروا لك يا رسول الله رأيتم يا رجال الضفة كيف فر الجنود واليوم ممنوع التجول
Palestine Liberation Organization Secretary General Saeb Erekat on Sunday reiterated that the Palestinian leadership will soon make critical decisions regarding the relationship with Israel. In an interview with Hamas's Al Risala newspaper, Erekat said that in the coming days there will be an extended meeting of the Palestinian leadership to discuss the implementation of the decisions taken by the Central Council of the PLO regarding interaction with the Israelis. In March this year, the PLO's Central Council decided to end the security coordination with Israel, and Palestinian Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas warned in his UN speech in September that the PA was no longer committed to the 1994 Oslo Accords.
Tensions are expected to rise between Palestinians and Israelis as the Knesset is pushing a bill that would allow Israeli settlers to pray in the Al-Aqsa Mosque. A Knesset member representing the right-wing Home Party has submitted the bill known as Freedom of Worship. Several lawmakers have already signed the motion. If approved, the law would legitimize the worship of Israelis inside the Islamic Holy Site. The bill is expected to aggravate the already volatile situation in the occupied territories. Tensions began to flare in early October after settlers backed by Israeli troops repeatedly stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque, Islam's third holiest site.
Palestinians have laid to rest two of their own, killed by Israeli forces in separate incidents of Palestinian-Israeli violence. Hundreds came out for the funeral of a Palestinian woman Israeli police say tried to ram border officers with her car in the West Bank village of Silwad. Police say the officers took cover and fired at her vehicle. In Gaza City, residents mourned a Palestinian shot dead at the border fence when Israeli troops opened fire. The Israeli military says a crowd of Palestinians were rioting at the fence and that soldiers shot at the main instigators to stop them from breaking through. It's the latest death toll in 3 months of sustained lethal violence between Israeli forces and armed civilian attackers, now including this incident in Jerusalem's walled Old City, where police say a Palestinian was shot dead by Israeli police after trying to stab an officer. Over 145 people have been killed in the 3 months of heightened violence. The unrest started with a dispute over a Jerusalem holy site revered by both Palestinians and Jews, but it's been fueled by Palestinian frustration over Israel's nearly 50-year-long Palestinian occupation, and it's raising fears of an even wider escalation, a decade after the last Palestinian uprising subsided.